All right, guys, Resistance Chicks coming back at you January 19th, 2017.
Yep.
What do we got next?
All right, so many of you have been watched our video on the Paris Peace Conference and how we support Israel. You want to know, how did the Paris Peace Conference turn out? Well, the UN Resolution 2334 back in December that was pushed through by the Obama administration, by the Secretary of State, John Kerry, backed by, backed by their force, even though they abstained from voting. They did this strategically to try to push Israel into a two-state solution. And they pushed forward this Paris peace talks. And there's a little quip here I want you to hear about.
Marriage counseling with neither the husband nor the wife present, but 75 diplomats from around the world trying to solve a complex and rather intimate conflict.
That was perfect.
Israel and Palestine weren't there.
Right.
So imagine you're married and you don't show up to the marriage counseling. And you got 75 other people telling you what you're going to do.
Right.
All right? This issue is really deep, but it's also, there are some simple things that I want to show you. But first, what did the Paris Peace Conference bring about? Well, I'll tell you, super crazy. The EU, all right, the UK especially, decided not to adopt the UN, this Paris Peace Conference. Of course, they voted with the UN. Everybody did, but we abstained. But when it came to the Paris Peace Conference, France really was pushing this forward, and they needed the weight of the UK and the European Union behind them, but they didn't have it. The UK is actually, you've heard of Brexit, and the woman that got elected, she is wanting a better relationship with Donald Trump. And with as Donald Trump goes, so goes this UK government, which, for better or for worse, it's helpful to Israel.
Right.
Okay, so it's kind of really surprising that the UK and the European Union did not adopt. It was they call it a more mild resolution that came out of the Paris Peace Conference, but it still blasted Israel for the settlements. And I'm going to get to some points here about these settlements over contested land in a minute. Let's see. Okay, we have particular reservations about an international conference intended to advance peace between the parties that does not involve them. Indeed, which is taking place against the wishes of the Israelis. Netanyahu did not want this to go down, all right? Which is taking place just days before the transition to a new American president, when the U.S. will be the ultimate guarantor of any agreement, the Foreign Office says, the British Foreign Office, all right? So what happened was the Jerusalem Post has learned that France was pressing inside the meeting for the EU to adopt the Paris Declaration, but these efforts were rebuffed by Britain and some Balkan states keen on getting off on the right foot with Donald Trump. The Paris Declaration reaffirmed support for a two-state solution and called for a stop to the violence and ongoing settlement activity. It also called on each state to refrain from unilateral steps that prejudice the outcome of the negotiations, The EU Foreign Policy Chief, Frederica Mogherini, said at a news conference after the meeting of the foreign ministers that while no conclusions were formally adopted, the ministers strongly reconfirmed our consolidated position on the two states and blah, 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 blah. So this person says she denies that the British blocked the adoption, saying the purpose of the meeting was an informal exchange on the issues. Although there was some exchange about whether the foreign ministers should include conclusions on the Middle East peace process. So I want to take you to a little video here. This guy here, he lives in Prague, but he I don't know if he is an Israeli citizen or he's been offered Israeli citizenship. He does a lot in Israel, and he's a news reporter over there. And I want you to hear what he has to say. He's going to start by telling you that the Palestinians don't want a two-state solution. Not all of them do. In fact, the women don't want to be don't want a two-state solution. Why? Because they don't want to be under
Sharia law.
Sharia law. All right?
Kerry was speaking of when he made his report not long ago that there was a certain parliament member who said there is no more two-state solution, which he did misquote him. Brother Begley said he's either quoting you, Steve, or from our channel. I don't know which one, because we both carried what John Kerry said. And but anyway, him or Danny Dannon, who is actually the ambassador to the United Nations for Israel, he's for one state. And in reality, it should be one state. And I'm not against the Palestinian people, by no means either. People would be surprised, Lisa, to know how many, especially Palestinian women, do not want a Palestinian state, because that means going to Sharia law. And they do not want that. They want the liberal way of the Israeli lifestyle that Israel has to offer under the democracy that they have. And they will not have it under a Palestinian state. So from what we have gathered, about 80% of Palestinian women do not want a Palestinian state.
And let me just add this, you know this because you're directly living in the area, correct?
So, yeah. That I wanted to show you. And when I was doing some research, he goes on to say, well, here, I'm just let him say it. Shoot. Sorry, guys.
The League of Nations.
Let's see.
Personal experience, the Palestinian people, it's a very small minority that are violent, that do cause the unrest that we have. Not saying that the Israeli government, that we don't have flaws, that we don't make mistakes. I'm not for acquisition land, things of that nature there. We don't need to do that. We can live in peace. My problem is why has the UN, formerly the League of Nations, made promises for a Jewish homeland only to break promise after promise after promise? So what difference is Resolution 2334? Not to mention biblically the right that Israel has, as far as, not saying that we should just go in and take this land, but people seem to forget when the resolution in 1920 and in 1922. In 1920, we were given all of everything to the west of the Jordan River and east, what is known as the modern-day state of Jordan. And in 1922, 2 years later, Britain reneged on the promise that was made through the League of Nations, and they give away 71% of the land to Hussein, who was to Abdullah, the son of Hussein, for helping fighting in World War I. 1947, again, they want to divide the land. That was after 6 years that the Jewish people went through a Holocaust and were not allowed to come to the land that was promised to them. Because in 1922, everything on the west of the Jordan River was for the Jewish homeland and for nobody else. And then they smuggled in, illegally, Egyptians and then now Jordanians into the country trying to populate it while they banned Jewish immigration during the war so the Jews could die off. So how can then, as Jewish people, and I was offered my own Israeli citizenship by the Knesset recently.
Okay, so that's what I want to teach you guys, is that I put this into a Word document so that I could highlight some things for you guys.
Fancy.
I know, it's my computer.
While she's doing that, I had one thought while I was watching this guy. And that is that here in America, we look at what happened to the black man through slavery, not just here in the United States, but all over the world, as atrocious. And even to this day, how many over 100 years later, like 150 years, way more than that, like 170? When was the Civil War?
1860 to 1860.
Thank you. I knew it was 1850, whatever. We view it as so atrocious. And then we also view us coming into the United States and a lot of evil people kicking the Native Americans off of their land is very atrocious, and we're still trying to make up for that today.
Right.
And what happened after World War II, we saw what was done in an effort to exterminate a people. And the entire world, essentially got together and said, you know what, we're going to make up for this. And we're going to put you back to your rightful homeland. And then just 6 years later, they're already turning their backs on them. And we've been doing that ever since. And it's kind of like you've got the black man and you got the white man standing up for the black man. You've got the Native Americans and you got the white man standing up for the Native Americans. But nobody's there to stand up for what happened to the Jewish people literally in our last century.
So what I want to teach you is that actually, when he mentions that 6 years, what he was saying is that the atrocities of the killing of the Jews happened before the 1947.
Right.
So one of the things in history you maybe have heard, I should bring up a clip of Lawrence of Arabia, this British
fantastic movie.
colonial warrior, pretty much colonizing the entire globe. Okay, India was British, Africa, British. And so all these different places, there's British colonies. Well, the British actually set up a land in Palestine in 1920 for the Jews. I want to show you, this was called the Mandate for Palestine. Now, when we hear the term Palestinians, there's really no such thing as Palestinians except for people who were native to the land.
Well, we live near Cincinnati.
But
we're Cincinnati. It's like saying they're Cincinnatians.
No, actually,
it's a place.
There's no city. It's a large place. It's not a state. It's not a government. There was no government in there was no Palestinian anything. It was a region, like the Western United States. It was a region.
So we're talking about the Western United Statesians.
Right. Exactly. All right. So this is the final territory assigned to the Jewish National Home in 1922, which gives you everything west of the Jordan River, including the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. This, I'm going to tell you in a minute, was given 77% of what was first promised to the Jews was given over here and became Jordan. All right? You think Jordan's been around for a while. So showing the area of Transjordan in which the reconstitution of the Jewish national home was to be postponed or withheld, the territory of the Jewish Palestine has been reduced by 77% of the original mandate. Now, the Jews are supposed to be in Palestine as of a right and not of sufferance. Winston Churchill said, when it is asked what is meant by the development of the Jewish national home in Palestine, Palestine is this giant region, all right? It may be answered that it is not the imposition of a Jewish nationality upon the inhabitants of Palestine as a whole, but the further development of the existing Jewish community with the assistance of Jews in other parts of the world in order that it may become a center in which the Jewish people as a whole may take, on the grounds of religion and race, an interest and pride, but in the order that this community should have the best prospect of free development and provide a full opportunity for the Jewish people to display its capacities, it is essential that it should be known that it is in Palestine as of right and not sufferance. Okay? So I like what this guy says. He says, ever ask yourself during the 30-year period between 1917 and 1947, thousands of Jews throughout the world woke up one morning, decided to leave their homes and go to Palestine? The majority did this because they heard that a future national home for the Jewish people was being established in Palestine on the basis of the League of Nations obligation under this is what's called the Mandate of Palestine document. The Mandate for Palestine was an historical League of Nations document laid down the Jewish legal right to settle anywhere in Western Palestine between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, an entitlement unaltered in international law. The Mandate for Palestine was not a naive vision briefly embraced by the international community. 51 member countries, the entire League of Nations, unanimously declared on July 24th, 1922, whereas recognition has been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and to the grounds for reconstituting their national home in that country. Any attempt to negate the Jewish people's right to Palestine as Israel and to deny them access and control to the area designated for the Jewish people by the League of Nations is a serious infringement on international law. Okay? Now, the U.S. was not part of the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson was not allowed to be part of it, according to our government. All right, so there are the two most significant events in modern history leading to the creation of the Jewish national home. The founding of modern Zionism. All right, there was a man who lived, Benjamin Zeev Herzl, and he said, after witnessing the spread of anti-Semitism around the world, Herzl felt compelled to create a political movement with the goal of establishing a Jewish national home in Palestine. To this end, he assembled the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. Herzl's insights and vision can be learned from his writings. Oppression and persecution cannot exterminate us. No nation on earth has survived such struggles and suffering. And Palestine is our ever memorial home. The very name Palestine would attract our people with a force of marvelous potency. Okay, so the origin and nature of the Mandate of Palestine, historical League of Nations document, laid down the Jewish legal right to settle anywhere western Palestine, a 10,000 square mile area between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. It's a legally binding document, okay? Council of League of Nations. On April 18th, 1946, when the League of Nations was dissolved, and all of its assets, and because of World War II, and duties transferred to the United Nations, the international community, in essence, reaffirmed the validity of this international accord and reconfirmed that the terms for a Jewish national home were the will of the international community. All right? Many seem to confuse the Mandate for Palestine, the trust, with the British Mandate, the trustee. The Mandate for Palestine is a League of Nations document. All right? So 51 countries got together, unanimously voted, and unlike nation states in Europe, modern Lebanese, Jordanian, Syrian, and Iraqi nationalities did not evolve. They were arbitrarily created by colonial powers. So that's what I want people to understand. All these other countries were created by these colonial powers, by the French and by the British.
Right.
In 1919, in the wake of World War I, England and France, as mandatory, e.g. official administrators and mentors, carved up the former Ottoman Empire, just like the United States. Right? Which had collapsed a year earlier into geographic spheres of influence. This divided the Mideast into new political entities with new names and frontiers. I'm not saying that this was right.
They created a bunch of cliques, essentially.
Well, they took land and then they said, this can be you.
This is you, and this is you, and this is you, and this is you. And then everybody, and then what do? I mean, it's kind of like football. You start rooting for your team, and you create these, like, it's like gangs. It's like creating a bunch of gangs. And now we've seen the results of that.
The prevailing rationale behind these artificially created states, these weren't real, these didn't evolve, these weren't people who went into a land and conquered it. They were, okay, you can have this, you can have this, was how they served the imperial and commercial needs of the colonial masters. This is bad. Colonialism is bad. Iraq and Jordan, for instance, were created as emirates to reward the noble Hashemite family from Saudi Arabia for its loyalty to the British against the Ottoman Turks during World War I. Under the leadership of Lawrence of Arabia, Iraq was given to Faisal bin Hussein, son of the Sheriff of Mecca, in 1918 to reward his younger brother Abdullah with an emirate. Britain cut away 77% of its mandate over Palestine, earmarked for the Jews, and gave it to Abdullah in 1922, creating the new country of Transjordan, or Jordan, as it was later named. And that's what I wanted to get at, and that's what I wanted to share with you, that the Jewish Palestine was always supposed to be everything at least west of this. It should have been more, all of it. But now you've got Jordan over here, right? Just give it. Where are the people crying to the Jordanian government?
Right.
Where are the Palestinians saying, "Oh, Jordan, I want a two-state solution with you"?
Exactly.
We're so Syria, I want a two-state solution with you.
Right.
Oh, Lebanon, I want a two-state solution with you. It's only because the Arabs don't want the Israelis and the Jewish people in the Middle East.
Right.
And not everybody, but obviously it's a spiritual battle. Now this is what I want to get to too. Palestine is a geographical area, not a nationality. All right, delineating the final geographical area of Palestine designated to the Jewish national home, as described by the mandatory Palestine introductory position, and then it describes where it's at. The Arabs, the UN, and its organs, and lately the International Court of Justice as well, have repeatedly claimed that Palestinians are a native people. So much so that almost everyone takes it for granted. The problem is that a stateless Palestinian people is a fabrication. The word Palestine isn't even Arabic. Okay, in a report by His Majesty government in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and North Ireland to the Council of League of Nations, British made it clear Palestine is not a state, it is a name of a geographical area. Okay, and it came from the Romans, and the name came from the Latin Philistia, and then Palestinian, and there's Palestine. Historically, before the Arabs fabricated the concept of the Palestinian peoplehood as an exclusively Arab phenomenon, no such group existed. This is substantiated in countless official British documents. In fact, before local Jews began calling themselves Israelis in 1948, they called themselves the Palestinian. The Jerusalem Post, which was founded in 1932, was first called the Palestine Post.
Right.
The bank, this Jewish bank, was called the Anglo-Palestine Company. And then today's Israel Philharmonic Orchestra was founded by German refugees and was called the Palestine Symphony Orchestra.
Which is what I was getting at when I was saying the Cincinnatians. It's a place.
Right.
It's not a people.
Right. So they're just keep trying to come up with all kinds of claims, like somehow they were the Philistines or even Stone Age Canaanites. Somehow they were the people that David defeated. As if the myth were not enough, former PLO chairman Yasser Arafat also claimed Palestinian Arabs are descendants of the Jebusites, who were displaced when King David conquered Jerusalem. Contradictions abound. Palestinian leaders claim to be descended from the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Jebusites, and then the first Christians, which would have made them Jewish. They also hijacked Jesus and ignored that he was Jewish. So the rhetoric by the Arab leaders on behalf of the Palestinian rings hollow. Arabs in neighboring states who control 99.9% of the Middle East land, this is key, have never recognized a Palestinian entity. They have always considered Palestine and its inhabitants part of the great Arab nation, historically and politically, as an integral part of Greater Syria, a designation that extended to both sides of the Jordan River. In the 1950s, Jordan simply annexed the West Bank since the population there was viewed as the brethren of the Jordanians. Jordan's official narrative of the Jordanian state building attests to this fact. I could go on and I could go on. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to bore you guys. But well before the 1967 decision to create a new Arab people called the Palestinians, when the word Palestinian was associated with Jewish endeavors, a local Arab leader testified in 1937 before the Peel Commission, "There is no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term the Zionists invented. There is no Palestine in the Bible. Our country was for centuries part of Syria." So there you have it. When we go to these parents, the whole point of the UN resolution is to say that the Jews shouldn't be and part of this land that was actually given to them in 1920. They should have this 1920.
Okay.
And then they should have this whole area. But this is Jordan, right? This side here. So they should at least have everything here. But there's the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And then that's where the settlements are.
Right.
And that's the big thing. The League of Nations set this up for better or for worse. You can't blamed the Israelis for saying this is what was given to us. First, this was given to us.
Right.
Then you cut us down to here.
Right.
And now you keep pushing us back and pushing us back and pushing us back. And everybody around us tells us we don't even have a right to be here or a right to exist.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you read that quote from Winston Churchill, what he was saying is there's already a Jewish people there. And so what we want to do is invite other Jewish people to come. And essentially it's kind of like a bee colony that only has so many bees in it. And and they're already there.
So I know that's a lot for you guys, but if we're going to talk about this, we need to be knowledgeable.
You can't just go
history.
at it, without all the facts.
How can we fight about whether there should be two different states if we're not even talking, we're not using the same terms?
Right.
If there's no such thing as a Palestinian.
Right.
It's the greater Arab world. Right?
And so there are certain zealots that live in this area that are fighting for these certain things. But it's not like you have the Palestinians against the Israelis, which is why when we first were watching that video from that guy, he was saying there's a lot of Palestinians that don't want a two-state solution because the women don't want Sharia law.
And that's a whole nother video. If we could one time go into the history of the fact that in the 60s and 70s, if you guys look at pictures and videos,
they were wearing
Iraq
bikinis
and Iran, and the women, when they started to push Sharia law, the women fought back, but the force
is too
to be
strong.
reckoned with. You're going to have your head chopped off, and they started to enforce Sharia law. So, anyways, this is not a conspiracy; it's the truth.
Right. So follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us, Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks. Leave comments. We love you guys. This is Leah Michelle signing off. If you stuck with us this long, God bless you.
Amen.
I was called